Power without size and compromise. It's something I've been striving for over the last few years, and with my latest PC, I think I'm finally closer than ever, with 4K, 60 frames a second performance that's ready to take on the gaming world. Now this PC all started a few months ago when Coolermaster got in touch and wanted to sponsor a project, and I wanted to put together something that was that little bit different, and as such we've gone for the ultimate gaming bedroom setup, and I'm so happy with the results. To kick the build off, I needed to start with a motherboard, and for this PC I wanted to reduce the footprint as much as possible, but not do so in a way that would lose out on features. That's why I went for a Micro ATX motherboard, and it's the Asus Strix Z370-G. It's got all of the features really that I'm after, including quite a neutral design that is very attractive, support for multiple graphics cards, and sockets for PCIe SSDs. There's also plenty of fan headers on board too, which actually isn't always the case on smaller sized motherboards. Now the processor that we've got here is the Intel i7-8700, and yes, this is the non-K version, which might seem a little bit crazy, but realistically, in the vast majority of titles at 4K 60, I don't think we'd actually see many benefits for going for an overclockable version. But don't get the wrong impression, as this is hardly a step down, as it's a mighty fine CPU, with 6 cores that will crush it when it comes to gaming, video editing, or pretty much any daily activity really. And because we're not overclocking, the chip is likely to last that little bit longer, and it will cost us less out of the gate too, allowing us more money to spend on other components. To cool the chip, I'd originally planned to use an air cooler with the new Coolermaster Master Air MA610P. And I was actually quite looking forward to seeing it in its full RGB glory, but unfortunately it proved just a little bit tall for our chassis. Therefore I grabbed the Master Liquid 240 instead, and I'm actually quite glad I did this, as it opened up the frame a little bit and gave us a bit more breathing room, and of course it allowed us for that little bit more efficient cooling. Now it's time to get a little bit controversial though and talk graphics. As you guys will probably know by now, in my personal system I use a GTX 1080 Ti, which can crush it through pretty much any title and resolution. In this PC though, I wanted to cram as much hardware in here as possible, and as such I have my GTX 1070 Ti sample awaiting further use, and I actually stole a second card from Mr. Who's the Boss. I hope he hasn't noticed yet. These two cards should give more performance than a single 1080 Ti could ever dream of, but as we'll discuss in a bit, there's a little bit more to the story here than meets the eye. As for RAM, we didn't actually need to go too crazy, but I've stuck 16GB of Skill Trident Z DDR4 here. It's not RGB, and I know, switch off the video now, not worth watching. But it does come in a range of colours that will suit your build, and performance is top draw, with a range of speeds, with this one running at 3200 MHz. With 2 graphics cards, we are going to need a lot of juice to get this thing up and running, but I did want to give us some more headroom to maybe expand out a little bit later with something more powerful, and as such we've grabbed the Coolermaster V1000. Rated at 80+ gold, this power supply is very efficient, and it remains quiet at both idle and under load. Because it's fully modular, you only need to use the cables required for your particular build, and you have the added benefit of being able to swap out the cables to something more upmarket if so desired, with myself opting for braided cables from Bitfenix. The boot drive is the Kingston K1000, an NVMe SSD with read-write speeds up to 2700 and 1600 megabytes a second respectively, which is pretty crazy, and I absolutely love the form factor too, including the fact that you don't require any cables for installation. The version that Kingston sent out is the 256GB version, which while not the largest out there, it still allows for plenty of space allocated to my favourite games. I'm also using a 1TB WD Blue drive though for more mass storage, as I want to store a large catalogue of multiplayer games that won't benefit from the extra speed, but that I do need installed for whenever my friends come over, and of course in addition to any music and video files that I am eventually going to get stored. So those were all of the parts that I used for the system, but of course I had to put it all together. And the build did take slightly longer than usual because I was using quite a small enclosure. The case in particular is the Coolermaster Q300P, and it was by far the easiest small case I've built into date. It's got plenty of room for all of your hardware, and it's a nice balance between size and accommodatability. Well, I don't think that's actually a word, is it? I used Coolermaster's RGB master fans throughout and connected it all together with their RGB controller. I won't lie to you, I was pretty worried about cable management, but there's an insane amount of room at the back, and the back panel closed first time without any resistance at all. The end result looked just how I'd pictured, and I've always loved the look of Nvidia's reference coolers, and the soft green glow works perfectly with the overall theme. Obviously, as it's a RGB-ified system, you can work with any colour palette that takes your mood, but I was actually quite satisfied with the Nvidia green look. Now obviously it's all very well having an attractive PC that does do the job, but I wanted something that could rip through 4K gaming, and this is where things get very interesting indeed. The 6-core processor is able to crush synthetic and real-world scenarios, and as such, if you are planning a PC for both work and play, this will do you proud. Gaming is of course the primary task for this PC though, and you'll be pleased to hear that it's the most powerful PC I've ever built. Sometimes. Games that are properly optimized will work a treat, and regardless of resolution, average frame rates are sky high, with a 4K 60fps dream well and truly achieved. I have to say that playing Battlefield 1 and Rise of the Tomb Raider with SLI enabled, it's really a thing of beauty, and when you look at the numbers, the case for SLI really speaks for itself. Unfortunately though, this isn't always the case, and as such, some games won't scale all that well at all, and in some situations the frame rates are actually lower than they would be with a single card. And this is only the tip of the iceberg, as some games will work fine, but they'll actually pick up noticeable micro stutter, which can be more noticeable than a lower, smoother frame rate in the first place. My advice here is actually pretty simple. If you're looking at getting a very high-end system and you want to throw a lot of money at your graphics, then I would advise getting the best single card that you can, as it will be better in terms of longevity and in terms of support. But there's definitely a case for SLI. I mean, I myself, back in the day, went for two 680s because I'd already bought one and then I bought another later down the line. And that's when I'd recommend doing it rather than getting two cards straight out of the gate. Don't get me wrong though, what I've achieved here is one hell of a PC, and it's going to see me through plenty of 4K HDR action. If you're interested in any of the parts featured here, then you can find them all down in the description listed below. Stay tuned for the video that will give you the full bedroom setup tour. We've got Dolby Atmos speakers, a 55-inch HDR TV. I'm starting to spit now. That's how excited. That's not a very good way to end the video. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more videos just like this. Stay tuned for part 2, and I'll see you next time.